All right, what's going on, guys? Today we are going to be diving into my Bitcoin and XRP price predictions headed into the end of 2026. Obviously, things are not looking good right now, but I think there is some things to be excited about and to look out for. I also think there's a lot of things retail traders and investors need to be careful of. They need to look out for. It looks pretty obvious to me where we are headed, and this is kind of going inside my mind as someone that's been in the space for a while. What I'm expecting to happen in the short term, and I guess you could say long term, headed towards the end of 2026. So the first thing I want to point out is looking at Bitcoin on this daily time frame. Right now, everything is going to be following Bitcoin until we start seeing real institutional adoption for these other coins such as XRP, XLM, HBAR, etc. So as of right now, everything's going to be following Bitcoin. So I'm going to be using Bitcoin right now on this daily chart. The first thing we're going to be looking at for Bitcoin are these daily levels, these daily lows, right? We have a daily low at 52,530, another low at 49,000, and then 38,500. So a lot of times these lows are quote unquote support levels. Retail is looking at those price ranges where we're going to see a bounce, and these institutions, they know that. So I'm expecting us to chop down and potentially make a slight retracement back to the upside. And then I'm expecting us to visit this 52,530 level. And then you're going to see a bunch of retail traders and investors over leveraging, a ton of buy orders sitting here, trying to predict the bottom. This is what happens every single time people are essentially gambling and trying to predict the bottom. So I'm expecting us to, once we reach these ranges, to probably again retrace back up. I'm still expecting us to make a lower high here, and then I think we're going to rip back down to this next level, this 49,050 level. Again, people are going to try and predict the bottom again, over leverage, put all this liquidity and money back into the markets, then make another lower high, and then rip back down to this, I guess you could say, last leg of this 38,500 level. And that is going to take us to around November, around the midterm elections for the United States. And why am I looking at the midterms? It's pretty simple. Today, BlackRock came out and said this: BlackRock Bitcoin upside is going to be around midterms. BlackRock says Bitcoin could see renewed upside around the U.S. midterm elections. The firm highlights fears of money printing, rising global liquidity, and growing institutional adoption as the primary drivers for this potential surge. So something to, I guess, understand is, like I said, BlackRock is the biggest financial institution in the entire world. They pretty much control where the market goes. They, whether up or down. When we say market makers, we're looking at people like Larry Fink. And then I want to point this out here. This was posted by Cointelegraph today. If we take a look at history, right, Bitcoin typically does not perform well in the summer and starts to pick back up again once we start headed into the fall. So Bitcoin's historical seasonality weakens through the summer, with average and median monthly returns typically declining up until September. Take a look at this right here. We start to see it absolutely surge back once we get into November. Right, it picks back up at the beginning of the fall, September, October, and then November. Again, we got the midterms, like BlackRock said, and then even taking a look at history right here. So I'm expecting us to continue to move down up until these ranges, up until November, and then hopefully once we get back into November is when things start to pick back up again, right? And like I said, the same can be said about XRP, Solana, XLM, HBAR, Ethereum, right? Everything is essentially following Bitcoin right now. And I know, looking at this XRP chart, it does look pretty crazy right now. Like, this entire move we made has almost been wiped out. And if Bitcoin drops as low as I think it's going to go, we're probably going to see a 50 to 70 cent XRP, currently sitting at $1.12. And honestly, I'm not going to be too upset with that, right? I've done my research on XRP. I know what XRP is. I know the utility behind it. So I'm just going to continue to accumulate on the way down. And if we hit those levels, I'm going to have a ton of XRP, right? Eventually, the market is going to go back up. If you just take a look historically, crypto, stocks, it doesn't matter. Markets go up, markets go down. And people freak out. Everyone thinks it's over right now. I mean, go back in history, man. We saw a Bitcoin. What's back here? We've seen Bitcoin go from let's see, 68,000 and pull all the way back down to 15,000. And people thought it was over then. And then we ripped all the way up to 126,000. And now we're back down to 63,000. No big deal. Even if we visit 38,000, no big deal. Right? We've seen the longevity of Bitcoin, how it's performed throughout history. And I'm not too worried about it. You know, you're never going to sit here and perfectly predict when the exact day the market's going to recover and when we're going to get back into a bull run. But what you can do is have a plan. If you've done your research on these coins, you just dollar cost average on the way down. And then once we get back into a bull run, you slowly start selling and taking your profits. You know, of course, I'm not a financial advisor. This is just my opinion, but it's really that simple. And people really overcomplicate it. And people freak out and they panic sell and then they completely exit the space. And it's really sad to see. But if you just take a look at history and do a little simple chart analysis and just take a look at history, you'd see that it's not over and you just have to be patient. So this is what I'm expecting. I think Bitcoin can pull back down to below 40K to around 38,000. It could even go lower. We'll see. That's kind of my conservative target, to be honest. And then XRP, like I said, anywhere between 50 and 70 cents, I think would be realistic if Bitcoin pulled back that much. So, like I said, if you guys got any questions, drop them in the comments. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys soon.